An alien force is threatening to destroy all life. From distant planets, they send their final plea, a fragile signal in the endless void of space. But not all hope is lost. Humanity, warriors who have never known surrender, will face the unimaginable, a battle not just to protect Earth, but to save the entire universe. Can the creativity and resilience of humankind stand against the uncontrollable wrath of Dominion? Where will we go when life and death are separated by a single decision? The war has begun, and none of us can turn back. The vast expanse of space envelops the universe, a place where distant worlds have never been touched by human eyes. Here, life is slowly being destroyed by a terrifying force, the Dominion, a brutal military empire expanding its borders across weak, defenseless planets. One by one, worlds and civilizations are crushed under their might. Now, they march toward the last remaining crumbling civilizations. Nar, one of them being the Concordat, an alliance of 3 species. The Nar, plant-based beings capable of communicating with nature. The Suk, aquatic creatures living in the deep oceans. And the Avanwan, humanoid beings with superior intellect. The Avanwan homeworld is in a state of emergency. Tahoe, an ambassador of the Avanwan, stands in the darkened room of a military base, his eyes fixed on the control panel of an old, worn-out signal transmitter. The dim emergency lights flicker around him, reflecting the remnants of technology abandoned after relentless attacks by the Dominion. Tahoe can hear the distant sound of gunfire echoing from the hallway, the sounds of war tearing through his world. Tahoe raises his 3-fingered hand, tapping the panel, encoding critical information with the fastest speed he can manage. Each keystroke is a decision. Each piece of data he sends out is a plea for help from a world that may never even know they exist. This data isn't just tactical information. It's a painful confession of the Concordat's desperation. They have nowhere to hide, no way to fight back against the Dominion, and all they have left is a fragile hope placed in a distress signal cast into the infinite void of space. Tahoe, the signal is ready. Ju, the science director of the Concordat, speaks up, her eyes showing fatigue but still carrying an undeniable determination. She looks at the screen, seeing the data they have fought so hard to input information not just about the 3 species of Nar, Suk, and Avanwan, but also details about the Dominion's weapons, their methods of invasion, and the worlds already fallen under their control. Tahoe doesn't respond immediately. His gaze is distant, fixated on the final readings on the control panel. Time seems to slow in this room. The silence of the military base suddenly becomes a reminder of the horror they are facing. Their power reserves have dropped to a mere 177%, and their comrades are scrambling to defend what little is left. The attacks are drawing nearer, but there seems to be nothing left to save. "We have no choice left," Tahoe whispers. He takes a deep breath, his hand resting on the send button. He can hear footsteps outside enemy soldiers moving closer. If someone's out there, they'll hear us. If not, we've done all we can. He presses the send button. A series of soft beeps echoes from the transmitter, and immediately, the Concordat's distress signal is sent into space. The first step of their desperate journey has been taken. Faint beams of light from the transmitter stretch into the vast emptiness of space, where only the cold silence of the universe responds. "Please, let someone hear us," Tahoe murmurs, cold sweat beading on his forehead. The atmosphere in the base grows heavier as Ju stands beside him, her eyes fixed on the signal being transmitted. The footsteps outside are growing louder. By any means, they must hope that this signal won't be a futile cry. But the harsh truth is that there's nothing more they can do but pray. Meanwhile, more than 200 light-years away on Earth, Lieutenant Jinwoo is on duty at Mariana Station, located deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. This is where humanity has monitored space signals, but for the past several years, this place has only received meaningless cosmic signals, with no evidence of extraterrestrial life. The monotonous nights have made Jinwoo feel the weight of loneliness. But tonight, something unexpected happens. "What is this?" Jinwoo mutters. unable to believe his eyes as he looks at a signal unlike anything he's ever received before. A series of regular signals, each one transmitting with such precision and clarity. He steps closer to the screen, his eyes wide in disbelief and awe. This signal isn't from an asteroid, nor is it from any human satellites or spacecraft. It is a perfectly structured message, a signal that has been encoded. Jinwoo cannot remain calm. This isn't a coincidence. A call, a distress signal from space, has just been heard. Immediately, Jinwoo activates the emergency check mode. This signal seems to be a message from an alien civilization, and if it's true, it could change everything. The world as they know it may never be the same again. With trembling hands, he contacts his superiors. "I need you here immediately. This is a significant discovery. It could be extraterrestrial life," Jinwoo says, his gaze still glued to the screen showing the incoming signal. The moments following this discovery will be decisions that not only change his life, but could change the future of humanity. In the stillness of Mariana Station beneath the Pacific Ocean, Lieutenant Jinwoo struggled with the monotony of his overnight shift. This space station, built deep within the ocean to shield from cosmic radiation, had received almost no significant signals for the past 70 years. Every day, Jinwoo's work revolved around checking and analyzing cosmic signals without any special events. But tonight, that monotony was shattered suddenly and powerfully. Sitting in his simple chair, Jinwoo heard a sharp beep. It was a sound he had grown accustomed to over the years, but this time, it was unlike any signal he had ever received. He rushed to sit up, his eyes widening as he stared at the display screen. A strange signal was appearing, and it was unlike any random noise or disturbance from space. "What is this?" Jinwoo muttered, unable to believe his eyes. This signal had too perfect a structure, too regular, to be a natural phenomenon. Continuous electronic pulses were being emitted, unbroken, as if sending a clear message. What appeared on the screen forced Jinwoo to think deeply. This wasn't a random signal from some celestial body. This was a deliberate, intentional message from an unknown source. He quickly switched to advanced analysis mode. His hands flew across the keyboard, running through standard checks to verify the signal. He compared it to signals from satellites, spacecraft, and even secret military tests humanity had sent into space. But no results matched. This signal wasn't coming from any source they had ever known. It was too perfect, too organized, too purposeful. "This can't be real," Jinwoo whispered, his eyes widening in disbelief and concern. He couldn't explain why such a signal would exist. It was completely different from everything he had studied over the years. A strange sensation overwhelmed him, a rising sense of unease and excitement. Deep within his mind, he realized this might be the opportunity humanity had been waiting for all these years, a sign of extraterrestrial life. But that also could mean a terrifying danger. How could he be sure this wasn't a trap? If this was a trick from an alien force, what would happen to humanity? Unable to sit still any longer, Jinwoo activated the emergency system and contacted his superiors. "This is an extraterrestrial signal. We need immediate assistance," he quickly called out, his voice unable to hide the urgency. He continued observing the signal, but now it was no longer just a scientific discovery. This was a historic event that could completely change humanity's understanding of the universe. In the silent space of Mariana Station, only the beeps from the computers and Jinwoo's heavy breathing could be heard, as if time itself had stopped. The signal reception system was activated again. The large screen displayed on the other monitoring devices showing that the signal continued to pulse regularly, unchanged. This time, it was not just a series of electronic pulses. It also contained sequences of mathematical codes, numbers, and formulas Jinwoo had never seen before. A terrifying truth began to emerge. This was not a simple signal, but a message from an intelligent civilization. With labored breaths, Jinwoo rushed through the verification steps, checking the algorithms once more. Where is the signal coming from? And why is it appearing now? He couldn't answer those questions, but one thing was certain. It wasn't a coincidence. This was a distress call from a civilization, perhaps far away in space, or perhaps from an alien force in danger. Finally, Jinwoo could delay no longer. He immediately contacted Captain Miss' superior officer and briefed him on the emergency. "Captain, I need you here immediately. This is a signal we cannot ignore. I've checked all the systems, and the result is, this might be a signal from an extraterrestrial civilization," Jinwoo gasped, his face showing the fear and uncertainty within. Captain M arrived at the station within 15 minutes. Despite having just woken up, he quickly took his position and began reviewing the data that Jinwoo had gathered. "Show me everything you have," he ordered. Jinwoo pointed to the screen and then explained the strange sequences of signals he had analyzed. Captain M remained silent for a long moment, his gaze shifting from skepticism to astonishment. This can't be a coincidence. This is a distress call. The anxiety was now undeniable, but there was no time for discussion. Everyone in the station understood that something had begun a chain of events that could forever change the future of humanity. The atmosphere in the Earth United Council's meeting room was tense. Every eye was fixed on Dr. Yuna, the head of the Signal Research Team, and Admiral Doan, a seasoned military strategist. On the screen, the strange signal discovered by Lieutenant Jinwoo appeared clearly, a signal with structure, too precise to be a coincidence, too purposeful to be a random event in space. And despite all the scientific and military debates, one question remained for the Council to face. Should Earth take action, or remain silent and protect its own safety? "What is this signal, Dr. Yuna?" Secretary Park asked, unable to hide the skepticism in his voice. "This could just be a dangerous prank. If we respond, we might fall into a trap that we can't predict." Dr. Yuna, with her bright eyes, emphasized each word. "No, Mr. Park, this is not a prank. This signal has a clear mathematical structure. It contains intentionally encoded messages, including physical constants, prime number sequences, and graphical figures that could be a form of language. This is not a random phenomenon. And I assure you, this is a distress call from an extraterrestrial civilization." Silence filled the room as Dr. Yuna's words echoed, and everyone began to reconsider the meaning of this signal. The council members realized that this was not just an ordinary cosmic signal, but a sign humanity had awaited for centuries: the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations. However, if this was a distress call, it could also be an invitation, an opportunity to help, but it could also be a sophisticated trap from an unknown enemy. In this situation, fear seemed to cover everyone. Admiral Doan stood up, his gaze stern, and a deep, steady voice echoed, "We cannot simply ignore this signal. Humanity has waited for millennia to know if anyone else out there, in this vast universe, is like us. But the question remains, are we ready to face an unknown force, or will we live forever in fear and self-imposed limitations?" General Mi, with the sharp eyes of a strategist, quickly stood up. "But this could lead us into a war we are unprepared for. Do you see this? We've just acquired advanced space technology to leave our solar system, but can we face a civilization that may surpass us in technology and strategy? If this is a trap, we won't stand a chance." At that moment, Captain M, Earth's military strategist, stood up with a determined expression. "I understand everyone's concerns, but we cannot just sit and wait. If this is a distress call, we have a responsibility to respond. If we do nothing, we will live with regret. We can learn so much from that civilization, and if they need help, that's why we must act." A heated debate broke out immediately, with council members split into opposing groups. Some wanted to respond to the signal, while others worried about the safety of the planet. There were even some who argued that no action should be taken due to the high risk involved. Voices clashed, with everyone defending their viewpoint with strong arguments. As the debate grew more intense, President Tu sat quietly, his gaze distant, seemingly reflecting on a decision that could shape history. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm yet powerful. "We cannot choose eternal safety. This planet, humanity, cannot live forever in the shadow of isolation. The decision is clear. We will act. Prepare for a diplomatic mission, and if necessary, for a war. All fell silent. Every gaze was focused on President Tu, who had made this monumental decision. We will respond to the signal, but with a full plan. This is not a simple war. It is an opportunity for humanity to prove that we do not fight merely for our own survival, but for the survival of other civilizations. The entire universe must know that we are not just invaders, we are helpers. The decision had been made, but fear and uncertainty still loomed. The Council began implementing the next steps to prepare for an unprecedented space mission. However, they all knew that this path was filled with risks, with no guarantee of their survival. Yet, one thing was certain: humanity could not turn back. They had placed everything on a single opportunity. The soft glow from the display screens on the bridge cast an ethereal light, reflecting off the faces of those standing in observation. Earth, with all its hopes and anxieties, was preparing for an unprecedented journey. The fleet of 5 modern warships, equipped with the most advanced technology humanity had to offer, was getting ready for launch. Admiral Doan, who would command this mission, stood silently on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the ships as they underwent their final system installations. This journey was not just a simple space exploration. It was humanity's chance to prove they were not conquerors, but protectors, guardians of life in this vast universe. For the first time in his career, Admiral Doan was facing a mission that wasn't about protecting Earth, but venturing into an unknown part of space, a place where they didn't know what to expect or whether they would survive to return. Yet, what mattered most was that this mission could change the future of humanity. "If we don't go, we'll live forever in the shadow of fear," he murmured to himself, closing his eyes for a moment before turning back to face his officers. "We will go and act as guardians of life." In a final meeting before departure, Dr. Yuna, the head of the research team, stepped onto the bridge with a handheld data board. She quickly pointed to the large screen in front of her, where the ship's route simulation was being adjusted. "Our journey will take 19 days. We will use FTL, faster than light, technology to shorten the time. However, the systems aren't fully perfected, and we will have to contend with fatigue from the long trip." She paused for a moment, looking around at everyone, then continued, "You all know, this is a defining journey. What happens when we arrive will change everything, not just for Earth, but for the entire universe." The room fell silent as everyone understood the gravity of this journey. They were not just soldiers, scientists, or leaders. They were representatives of all of humanity, and they carried a mission that could not fail. There would be no turning back. Lieutenant Jinwoo, the one who had discovered the strange signal, stood nearby, his eyes still fixed on the screen as though he still couldn't believe what was happening. Since the discovery of the extraterrestrial signal, he had not stopped worrying about what awaited them. Though tasked with overseeing the communication systems and safeguarding the fleet's route, his heart was heavy with the question, was this signal truly a cry for help, or was it merely a trap? The answer could only be found once they arrived. "We don't know what we'll face, but we're going for one reason," Admiral Doan said, his voice resolute. "Because if we don't, those who are calling for help will never have a chance to receive it, and will never know whether there are other civilizations out there in this universe." With those words, the fleet began to move. The warship slowly lifted off the launch pad and into the deep void of space, where the faint light of distant stars guided their way. The ship's FTL engines ignited, leaving shimmering streaks of light on the radar screens. But no one could fully comprehend the strange feeling they were experiencing. This wasn't just another journey. This was the first step into an unexplored world, a place where unimaginable dangers awaited. Earth faded behind them, gradually disappearing in the wake of their trail in space. Inside the ships, astronauts and specialists worked continuously, preparing for the long voyage ahead. Dr. Yuna continued her research on the signal they had received, her eyes glued to complex data tables. Every time she looked at the numbers and symbols in the signal, she felt a strange connection between Earth and the civilizations beyond. What she and the research team had uncovered could change the entire history of humanity, but she couldn't shake the worry about the mysteries still hidden in the signal. Was it truly a distress call from a civilization in peril, or simply a strategy for invasion from an unknown force? Meanwhile, Admiral Doan stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back, gazing into the quiet expanse of space. Inside the ships, everyone was preparing for the unknown. But in the hearts of each person, a steady belief had formed. They weren't going for personal gain, for power, or for glory. They were going for life, for the survival of other civilizations, because they believed that the right action would lead to a peaceful future for the universe. With a firm look, Admiral Doan turned and headed toward the command module. We will get there, and we will not give up. Part 4 ends as the fleet embarks on its long, endless journey through the vastness of space, carrying with it hope and faith in an unknown future. Finally, after 19 days in space, humanity's fleet arrived at their destination. The screens of the Pathfinder spaceship lit up, signaling that they had reached their goal. But instead of the peaceful scene they had hoped for, what appeared on the screen was complete chaos. A planet was under attack, satellites and space stations were being destroyed, and in space, massive Dominion warships were sweeping through everything. The atmosphere aboard the Pathfinder grew tense as Earth's fleet drew closer to their destination. Admiral Doan stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed firmly on the main screen. Before him was a brutal battle unfolding between the forces of Concordat and Dominion, with Dominion warships surrounding and attacking the planet of Concordat. A large space station of the Concordat, showing clear signs of life and activity, was caught in the heavy bombardment by the enemy. The entire Earth fleet stood still, all hands clenched, ready for decisions that would determine the fate of this planet. "We're too late," Commander Jin, standing next to Admiral Doan, said in a low voice as he observed the scene of destruction on the screen. "The Dominion warships have completely taken control of this area. We only have one chance to act." But Admiral Doan remained unwavering. He was no stranger to warfare, but this time was different. It wasn't just about fighting for Earth's interests. He was fighting to protect another civilization, one that was being wiped out by the iron fist of Dominion. He turned to Dr. Yuna, who stood beside him, her face filled with concern. "Execute Plan B, immediately," Doan ordered. "We cannot let them destroy this space station. If we lose this station, all our hopes will vanish." With that decision, Earth's fleet charged into the battlefield, their powerful warships cutting through space, immediately engaging in the fierce battle. Glimmering blue energy beams from their weapons lit up the space, reflecting the inevitable destruction. The Dominion ships extended their offensive, but they didn't expect that their opponents were not as weak as they thought. Earth's warships, though not as large as the Dominion's, possessed the agility and creativity in combat that Dominion had not anticipated. Admiral Doan directed his ships to focus on the objective, the Concordat space station. At the same time, Lieutenant Jinwoo was coordinating with Earth's research team, analyzing the signals and seeking ways to counter the Dominion's attacks. "How can we fight against such a powerful force?" Lieutenant Jinwoo asked, his eyes still fixed on the screen where Dominion ships moved like monsters, preparing to destroy everything. "They are too powerful, too numerous." "Victory isn't always about numbers," Admiral Doan replied, his eyes sharp. "Creativity and surprise are the true weapons. We will not fight the way they expect us to." Earth's fleet did not follow a simple attack formation. Instead, they split into several small groups, moving with agility, making it impossible for the Dominion ships to identify the real target. These asymmetric tactics confused the enemy and caused them to lose their military advantage. Dominion ships began firing erratically, unable to distinguish which targets were real and which were decoys. Meanwhile, Dr. Yuna was working tirelessly to analyze Dominion's tactics, trying to find a weakness in the enemy. "We can see a gap in Dominion's command system," she said, her eyes lighting up as she discovered an important fact. "They rely on a central command system, If we break that system, their entire force will fall into chaos. An alarm sounded aboard the Pathfinder, causing the entire command room to tense up. Officers reported that one of Dominion's largest warships was preparing to launch a devastating weapon at the Concordat space station. Admiral Doan immediately gave the order. "Concentrate all firepower on that warship," he shouted. "This is our opportunity." Earth's fleet didn't hesitate. They unleashed a barrage of firepower on the Dominion ship. A series of massive explosions erupted, breaking through the warship's armor. In that moment, a sense of excitement swept over the crew. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Their unexpected tactics were proving effective. The battle raged on, each minute a fight for survival. However, with a combination of military strength and smart tactics, Earth's warships created a dramatic shift in the battle's momentum. Each accurate shot, each cunning strategy, demonstrated that humanity was not just here to invade, but to protect and safeguard life. One Dominion warship was finally destroyed, and the remaining ships began to falter. Though the battle was not yet won, it marked a turning point and indication that humanity's creativity could stand against Dominion's brutality. The storm of war raged relentlessly across space, but amid the chaos, a small light began to shine. Though Earth's fleet consisted of only 5 warships, their agility and creativity in combat had begun to make Dominion feel fear. After relentless and brutal attacks from Dominion, Earth's fleet had seized the initiative. Their asymmetric tactics, utilizing surprise and flexibility, caused the enemy to lose their footing and begin to show signs of confusion. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, Admiral Doan observed everything with absolute calm. Though the battle was still fierce, a distinct change had appeared in Dominion's actions. Their warships began to show signs of disarray, no longer attacking in unison. Some of Dominion's larger ships had been destroyed, while the remaining ones were starting to retreat. This had never happened in Dominion's previous wars. They were a mighty empire with rigid tactics, but now it was humanity's surprise and creative strategies that had caused a sudden shift in the battle. Commander Jin, who stood next to Admiral Doan, looked at the radar screen and could clearly feel the change. "Admiral, the Dominion ships are starting to retreat. Their command system has been disabled. Some of their large warships have pulled out of the battle." But Admiral Doan did not rush to celebrate. He knew that the victory was not yet secured, and Dominion remained a terrifying threat. "We need to capitalize on this opportunity. Contact the remaining ships. Give the order to focus fire on Dominion's key targets." Even though victory seemed to be within reach, everything could change in an instant. Doan understood that. A small mistake, a wrong move, could cost them dearly. While Doan continued to command from the bridge, Dr. Yuna worked tirelessly in the research center. She analyzed the signals from Concordat and the information they had gathered from previous engagements. After every attack, she searched for ways to understand Dominion's tactics more deeply. Despite the overwhelming tension, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. It was the wise decisions and cooperation between civilizations that were the key to overcoming these challenges. "We can do this," Dr. Yuna whispered to herself, her eyes still fixed on the tactical data displays. It seemed she could feel that, despite facing an enemy superior in numbers and weaponry, humanity and Concordat could create a monumental turning point through creativity and unity. Each small victory signal helped reinforce the morale of the fleet. The officers and astronauts aboard the warships, though tense, were also full of resilience, feeling the strength of unity. Every step, every decision they made was not just for themselves, but for the future of other civilizations. They were not simply soldiers, they were protectors, fighting for the survival of the entire universe. At that moment, Admiral Doan saw it clearly. While Dominion was weakening, what mattered wasn't just eliminating the enemy, but maintaining unity and resilience within the fleet. Everything matters, not just for this battle, but for the future of other civilizations, he said, his voice steady but resolute. "We are not just fighting to protect Earth, but to protect life itself." At that moment, an alarm sounded on the radar screen. A large Dominion warship, thought to be destroyed, suddenly changed course and was heading straight for the Concordat station, where thousands of lives were sheltering. "Focus all firepower on that ship immediately. We cannot let it get close," Doan shouted. Earth's warships simultaneously launched their counterattack, all weapons fully charged. Energy beams and shells fired continuously, cutting through the dark expanse of space. In just a few seconds, a wave of brilliant light engulfed the Dominion warship. Its shields were shattered. While Dominion's destructive power was formidable, it could not withstand Earth's fleet's flexible tactics. The Dominion ship was struck with precision at its weak points, and finally, it exploded in a violent detonation, shaking the entire space around them. The final signals from Dominion vanished from the radar screen. "We've won!" Jinwoo shouted, a joyful smile appearing on his face. But Admiral Doan didn't smile. He merely nodded, his eyes still focused on the signals appearing on the screen. "This is just the beginning. Let's keep fighting. None of us can stop until the survival of all these civilizations is secured." The determination in each person, each warship, remained unshaken because they understood that this victory wasn't just a military one, but a testament to the spirit of unity and humanity's moral duty among civilizations. As the light from Earth's warships cut through the night of space, it was a clear sign that humanity would never abandon hope. They would fight for the survival of everything that needed protection in this universe. 3 weeks after the brutal battle, the Concordat refuge station was no longer a pile of rubble in space. It had been rebuilt, not only with steel and technology, but also with the resolve and unity between civilizations. The space station, once threatened by Dominion's cruelty, now stood as a symbol of survival and the potential for cooperation between vastly different species. People from both Earth and Concordat understood one thing clearly. This was a new beginning, not just for them, but for the entire universe. Admiral Doan stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, gazing at the surrounding scene, where Earth's and Concordat's ships worked together in harmony. They were no longer simply soldiers in a war. Now, they were the builders of the foundation for a new alliance. The collaboration and sharing of technology between the two civilizations had created a new ecosystem of creativity and innovation. Although Dominion had been defeated, Doan could not forget what had happened. It was Dominion's brutality that had driven them, but it was the spirit of unity and the resilience of each individual that had helped them triumph. The help from the species in Concordat, from the plant-based Nar to the aquatic Sukhod, created an unbreakable strength. These three species, despite their vastly different biological forms, had not only fought together but also learned, shared, and helped one another. Ambassador Tahoe stood next to Admiral Doan, his eyes gleaming with pride as he watched the scene unfold. "Unity is strength. Without our cooperation, no matter how strong we were, we wouldn't have been able to defeat Dominion," he said, his voice full of emotion. Tahoe had witnessed this miraculous transformation from a once weak alliance, oppressed and on the brink of extinction, into an unstoppable force. Scientists and engineers from both Earth and Concordat had come together to create new technologies, combining advancements in faster-than-light (FTL) technology to create spacecraft and energy systems previously unknown. These inventions weren't just for military purposes, but were helping improve the lives of millions on Concordat's planets. At the Concordat Refuge Station, Dr. Yuna and Ju, Concordat's science director, stood together in the lab, examining samples and data from their joint research. Ju looked at Dr. Yuna, her eyes shining with a new sense of hope. "We did it. Earth's FTL technology exceeds all imagination. These ships, they don't just help us travel quickly between planets. They open up a new era for all species in the universe." Dr. Yuna nodded, her gaze full of determination. "But there's more, Ju." She paused for a moment, looking at tactical models and technologies. "We didn't win with just weapons. We won with trust and sacrifice. Different civilizations cannot exist as separate forces. We must come together for the common good of all." Both Dr. Yuna and Yu understood that while the war against Dominion was over, The real challenge was only beginning. Could they maintain this collaborative relationship? Could the differences between civilizations exist without eroding the unity they had just built? These questions remained unanswered, but at least they knew that victory didn't come solely from military might, but from understanding and patience. A few days later, at the Grand Assembly Hall on New Harmony, where representatives from Earth, Concordat, and the newly liberated worlds of Dominion gathered, an important speech was held. Ambassador Tahoe stood before the representatives of the civilizations, his eyes full of emotion. 1 year ago, Tahoe began, his voice deep and clear, we stood on the brink of extinction. Our alliance had been ravaged by Dominion, and none of us believed that anyone would come to our aid. But what happened next changed everything. People from a distant civilization, humans, responded to our distress call. They came, not because they wanted to win, but because they wanted to help. They didn't let us be erased. They brought us to a new world, a world where we could live, learn, and grow. Everyone in the room sat silently, listening to each word. This wasn't just a speech about military victory, but a reminder of the spirit of unity, of the ability to change fate when everyone works towards a common goal. We didn't win just because of strength, but because of trust, cooperation, and the humanity we found in each other, Tahoe continued. And today, we stand here, not just for victory, but for the future of all the civilizations in this universe. After Tahoe's speech, Admiral Doan stepped forward, looking into the eyes of the representatives of the civilizations. We didn't just save lives. We built a lasting alliance, a civilization that knows not just war, but how to unite and support each other. As the meeting concluded, one thing was clearer than ever. The alliance between Earth and Concordat wasn't just a bond between two civilizations, it was the beginning of a new future, an era of cooperation where all civilizations could grow and protect life in this universe together. Part 7 ends as the representatives of Earth, Concordat, and other civilizations stand together, showing that in a chaotic world, unity and humanity will always be the greatest strength.